The impudence, the audacity, the unmitigated gall of those Knuckleheads of Liberty podcasters, daring to voice opinions outside the mainstream of accepted thought. Listen if you dare. It's angry, it's funny, it's even sometimes sad, but it's always based on freedom and justice, as you will see. Here's our host, Jason McPhee.
Welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty. We are coming at you on March 30th, 2022. We're going to talk a lot in this show about public education and some of what's going on locally here in California as well with that. But before we get to that, let me introduce you to our panel. In our upper left-hand corner, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. In our upper right-hand corner, we have our screaming eagle of freedom, Tim Everett. He is a pilot in the state of California. My name's Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host today. So, public ed. Maybe we could jump right into the first graphic here. I guess Congress, not too long ago, it's saying, did a joint economic committee. They did a report, I guess. And one of the findings that they had in this report was, and it's something we're all sort of aware of, the zip code tyranny that goes on with the government monopoly in public schools. You know, you're sort of tied to whatever zip code that you're happen to be living in. And of course, this causes there to be a disparity between the schools where essentially your peer group is going to be a richer peer group if you happen to live in a nicer zip code, and your peer group's likely to be a, have a lot more economic problems if you happen to live in other zip codes. And this report actually, though, they kind of quantified that a little bit, and that was what was so interesting about it, I thought. And so Reason put this article out the other day, and in the report they found that a highly rated public school, essentially, you would have to spend about 4 times as much on the property value in order to get into that one as you do for a poorly performing public school. So, again, this is one of the consequences of our, our fetish for having this government run everything, and the idea of the public schools, I think a lot of libertarians might be okay with public funding of schools, but the idea, why on earth does government have to deliver the education? Why can't the money be handed out? And just like with a food stamp, you can go to a Raley's, or you can go to a Safeway, or you can go to, some other venue to get your groceries. They don't have a government store that you have to show up at and buy all your groceries. And why on earth do we do that with public schools? And let me hand this off to you guys. What do you guys think about this?
This is the work of the teachers' unions, that caused this zip code tyranny to be enforced. And it is really enforced in sometimes some very horrible ways. In that very article you just referred to, you spoke about that the article spoke about a woman by the name of Kelly Williams Bowler. This was just a hard-working woman, a mom, trying to get her kids better educated. And of course, the zip code tyranny was there and being enforced. This is happening in Ohio. This woman used her father's address to send her kids to a better school. Anyway, it was finally discovered. She was arrested and charged, persecuted. I think her sentence was eventually suspended. But this is what happens with this zip code tyranny. It is turning average Americans into criminals. That's what's happening. Just because you want a better education for your children. The people who are suffering the most from this zip code tyranny are Black and brown kids in the inner cities of America. And nobody seems to care. These liberals, these leftists, they love to tell us all about equity. We need equity. But they don't mind the disequity that we are seeing right now going on between suburban schools and inner city public schools. They don't mind that at all. But we have to change this. And school choice is the only answer. We have to have school choice. Universal school choice. They are talking about doing this thing about open enrollment. Open enrollment is a step in the right direction, but it is not school choice as we need it. We do need school choice where parents can take the money, the taxpayer dollars, and use it wherever they see fit to educate their children. This is what we need to solve many of these problems that we are seeing right now in public education.
Well, yeah. My father had an auto parts store in a little town called Healdsburg, California. And behind it, as part of the rent of the auto parts store, was a 3-room converted storage shed that is basically 3 rooms. So it had a kitchen, a little bathroom, a little tiny bathroom, and a kind of the rest of it. And we lived in it all. But anyway, instead of maybe renting or buying a nicer, bigger place, and I didn't mind it. It had, when it rained, it had a corrugated steel roof on it. So when it rained, it sounded really cool. And I was a kid, and I didn't care if I slept on a sofa bed and had to make my bed every day and flip it back into a sofa. I didn't care because I was a kid. But he sent me to the Catholic private school and paid the tuition for it instead of sending me to the free public school up the hill, Healdsburg Elementary or whatever it was. And so I went to St. John's Catholic School for from 2nd grade all the way through 8th grade. And it was probably the best education I ever had. But in the private world, I think that it would amount to the same situation where people that had more money are going to be able to afford better schools. I think that's just the human condition. You know, you have more money, you get to afford a better car. You get to afford a bigger house. You get to afford more steak, you know, and on and on. And you get to have a golf club membership and play golf. But if you don't, then all those things are marginalized. And so here's an attempt by basically by socialism, essentially, taking money from through taxation and using it for things that, in my opinion, just are not the job of government, you know, to educate people. But that's just my opinion. And guess what happens after all is said and done? You're right back to the same old thing. People are people, and you just can't change human nature. And that is that the more money you have, the better education you're going to get, even if it's because, you know, this school ended up in a district paid for by property tax on multi-million-dollar homes or more expensive homes, put it that way. And so your school is better than the one downtown in the low-rent district. Surprise, surprise. Oh, my God, I'm shocked. I don't think there's a solution. I think if government got out of education, that would be a partial solution. It wouldn't be the solution to the inequity between the haves and the have-nots. It's just the way it is. I mean, it's just, I'm sorry. We're not going to solve that. In my humble opinion, that's off the table. And
certainly, Tim. I just wanted to jump in on one thing. Certainly, you're right that there will always be inequity with wealthier people being able to afford more. But one of the crazy things about this is that they're taking the tax dollars from people and they're supposedly distributing it equally among kids. And yet the poor people are getting a worse product out of the same spending from the government, right? So the government schools in the wealthier district, the only reason they're doing better is because they happen to have a peer group where all the parents have more money, so they have more resources outside of the school system to help them with. But as far as the school system goes, they're essentially spending, you know, roughly the same amount, give or take, you know, within the state. And what the craziest thing is, because I actually have kids in the school, they actually wind up redistributing some of the money from the schools in the better districts to the schools with where there's more special needs, because essentially what they'll say is, oh, you have more non-English speaking people, so we're taking some of that money and handing it over here. And they don't even have enough money for the products in a lot of cases. I mean, things like paper towels and other things, they will have a list for when the kids start school. And they say, okay, you need to bring in like rolls of paper towels, pencils, pens, and all these other things. So it's just kind of crazy.
My understanding
but the
was that
thing
it was
is here,
paid
there's
for
one-
from property tax. But I guess I'm wrong. Go ahead, Leon. I'm sorry.
There's one thing, one little difference I have with what you just said, Tim. Okay, I mean in general I can see a point, but there's one little difference here. To me, there's a big difference between government funding public education and government delivering that public education. Right now, what we have going on with this zip code tyranny is government, taxpayers funding education, and also the government delivering that education, and they're delivering a crappy product. So what we are trying to do here, and I think there's a solution to it, because we are seeing it work in several places in the United States. What we are trying to do here is to remove the government from delivering the education. We're going to fund it, but not have the government deliver it, which to me is a big difference.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say in Sacramento you have South Sacramento, and it contributes X amount of dollars to this funding that you're referring to.
Okay.
And then you've got Carmichael and Fair Oaks and Folsom contributing Y amount of funding to this. Now,
okay.
Of course,
Y is greater than X, I assume, right?
Y is greater than X.
Okay.
And so does X get added to Y and divided by some number, or how do you do it? I mean,
here's part of what happens.
Yeah, the answer to your question is yes, but the government does not deliver the education, does not deliver the product. That's all I'm saying.
And specifically, what can happen too, Tim? Like for instance, Sacramento City Unified. That's where my kids are, and so you will have different types of schools within the Sacramento City Unified. You will have some good, say good neighborhoods, but upper income neighborhoods, and you will have some lower income neighborhoods in the same school district. So those kids, whether you're in one or the other, are supposed to get the same funding. Just because you live in the upper income neighborhood of Sacramento City Unified doesn't mean they spend more money. Your tax dollars get distributed throughout Sacramento City Unified. So you're not like, just the people who live near the wealthier school happen to get more money there. It's only there if they spend it beyond and above what the government was distributing. And then of course the state, I believe, kicks in some funds too. And then there's some potential federal funds depending upon, what it is that different programs and stuff like that.
Well, there's a little complicated formula here. Let me just explain it quickly. Okay, the way they do it. Okay, the state legislature every year will set what they call a revenue cap, more or less. Okay, they set a revenue cap. So let us say, for the sake of discussion, it's $10,000. Okay, they set a revenue cap. So what happens, say, in a very wealthy district that can raise, say, in property taxes, they could raise $8,000 per child. The state, the general fund will kick in $2,000 to make the $10,000. In say Butte County, where they could only raise $2,000 per child, the state, the general fund will kick in $8,000 to make the $10,000. So everybody gets, well, I'm not counting in the federal funding, which is a very small portion, but everybody will go to school at the revenue cap. But the problem is that even though everybody is going to school at the revenue cap, the government is delivering the product, and that is the big problem.
Okay, so if you're going to keep a system where you're going to tax people and take that money and spread it out, but not have the government deliver it, you're going to have it delivered by the private enterprise system of some
deliver the product. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got to have some bureaucracy that collects the money and distributes it out to these private schools, correct?
No, you're not
delivering it can follow the child. So yeah.
No, I'm sorry. What happened?
Well, it could follow the child. I mean, that's what I think Milton Friedman's talking about when he says voucher system, right? Essentially is that the money follows the child. So if your parent chooses to go to a certain school, then that money would go to that school because your child is going there, but not simply because, he lives in that school district. It's wherever he happens to choose to go to school. So
I see. So for certain parents that didn't want to drive and also I would assume if it was private, there wouldn't be any extra tax money, or would there, to drive the kid? I mean, are they going to chauffeur him in a limousine, or are they going to drive him in a school bus? Are they going to let him on his own recognizance? Is he going to? Is his parents going to have to do it?
Do you need
what's going to happen?
Well, do you need to get a subsidy to, if you get an EBD card, do you get a subsidy to decide if you're going to go to Rayleigh's or Safeway if one is farther away than the other?
No,
I don't
you
think
don't.
you don't.
No, you don't.
Yeah,
So you
exactly.
wouldn't. Then you're saying you wouldn't. Okay. So then the kids that live up in Butte County, they would probably stay up there in Butte County, and the teachers that wanted to get more money or something, or would they end up in a richer district? So the private teachers, private schools. Now I'm saying, in other words, what I'm saying is, I think you're going to end up with the same result. You're going to have lower quality schools in the poorer districts where people don't want to live. They don't want to teach those kids, for whatever reason.
But Tim, you get stores go the same way, right? Some stores market toward different people with different needs. So you don't need necessarily a Nordstrom's in a poorer district, right? I mean, and that's the thing.
Yes, you do. If you're gonna grade the quality level of the education, are you going to grade the quality level of the clothing you buy from Walmart versus?
Will it determine quality?
Yeah. Do we need to go? I mean, does the government have to come in and grade your trip to the grocery store and figure out?
No, but you do. You do, and
exactly.
Justice, in exactly the same way, you are going to have to grade the quality of education you got from your Butte County school versus the one you got in Fair Oaks. So, and the Fair Oaks school is going to attract the teachers that want to live in Fair Oaks. Maybe they're going to be higher quality, maybe not. I don't know, but the Butte County schools may not be quite so nice. I'm saying is that, to me, this is an insurmountable problem that nothing's going to solve it. And certainly not the government. Obviously, they can't even fund it. I mean, they're completely off the rails.
Speaking of government, let's jump in, because otherwise we're not going to get to the other topics.
All right.
Specifically, we have our Sacramento school district right now. They have a strike going on, and maybe we could get the graphic up on that invisible hand. And so they've been striking quite constantly for the last 4 or 5 years, and so it's caused an issue now where, after all this COVID, after all the problems that we've gone through with kids missing school and everything else, Sacramento City school district teachers have decided it's time to strike again. So the kids have literally now missed a week of school again, on top of all the lip service that we've had about how it's all about the kids and everything else. Now suddenly the teachers are striking again. And of course, they're citing all kinds of issues with unfairness. But we actually have statistics to bring you here on this show this time. And so the state auditor in 2019 did a report, because there was some talk of them going into what they called, they would face insolvency and essentially have to have the state take over the school. Yeah. And so this was before COVID, so it was in 2019. And so once COVID hit, then suddenly there was all kinds of other crazy funding and everything else to sort of rescue this system. But they're right back to where they started. But let me, just so there's no confusion over what the problem is and who's to blame, let's see what the state actually said about our local school district, Sacramento City Unified. And so what they actually said here, and I think this is indicative of a lot of districts out there when you have government running the show, it says Sacramento City Unified failed to take sufficient action to control its costs in 3 main areas: teacher salaries, employment benefits, and special education.
Employee.
Benefits. Employee benefits. Okay, and so and they said it increased its spending by $31 million annually when it approved a new labor contract with its teachers in 2017. So it said the Sacramento City Unified School District Board of Education approved the agreement without a plan for how it would pay for it. Sacramento City Unified also failed to control the costs of generous employee benefits it provided, which increased by 52% from fiscal years 2013, 2014 to 2017, 2018. And so I'm going to bring you guys through just a few stats too, just to show you guys the scale of what we're talking about here. So here's how the money is distributed. If you look at these green areas are all about the employee benefits. So what do you call it? And salaries. So just this small amount here is for other things. So we got books and capital, and this is contracts with other services and such. So right away you can see just proportionally where the money's going. Then let me just bring up a few other statistics and I'll throw it to you guys. So how does it compare to other local school districts? Well, if you can see this highlighted yellow line here, the average total compensation, the Sacramento City Unified School District is making more than all the nearby school districts: Elk Grove, San Joaquin Unified, Stockton Unified, and Twin Rivers Unified. So you can see they're right there at the top. And in 2019, 2020, they were spending more than $20,000 more per teacher in this area. And let me go to the next graphic really quick. As far as benefits that were they were spending massively more per teacher on benefits than they were for those same employees in the other school districts. You can see here it's ridiculous. It's like $20,000 per teacher in Sacramento versus the next closest is almost $11,000 in Elk Grove. And then finally, let me bring you to the final statistic here. And by the way, this report is available online. This is from the State Auditor of California. Okay, this is what they said. This is the government saying this about this government school district, this local government school district. And finally, special ed. This is for like handicapped kids and others. They've just let the cost just sort of run up. This is what they have the funding for, and this is the growth. So it's just absolutely outrageous. They haven't been able to keep any of this stuff in check, and that's exactly what the state auditor is saying about it. And yet they're claiming things are unfair and they need more money. So let me throw it back to you guys. What do you guys think about this?
You know, as Tim would say, I'm shocked. I'm shocked. A government entity is mismanaging our tax dollars. I am so shocked, Jason, you wouldn't believe. Oh, so surprising. No, but this is the nonsense that happens. Okay, whenever we have government controlling things, they're controlling the schools, the teachers' unions, and the allies in the Democratic Party. They're controlling the schools. They're misappropriating funds. They're spending money on things that they're not supposed to be spending money on. A lot of woke garbage these days. And then we see these outcomes. They are on the brink of insolvency. That is what is happening here. And I will bet you within a couple of years, that's exactly what's going to happen. And now we have these teachers' unions, the teachers' unions have the authority to call strikes. They seem to be doing it now like it's water, because they had one in October 2017, March 2019, April 2021, and now March 2022. They're going on strike. And what are they striking for? Now you think about this. Teachers are probably the only entity, the only set of workers, employees in the United States who can deliver a crappy product and still demand more pay. That's what's going on right now. This is insanity at its worst. And insolvency is coming not only to this school district, the Sacramento school district, but to others because of this same nonsense.
Well, not to mention getting a nice summer break too.
Exactly.
And I mean, if I only had to work, 9 months out of the year, and I made $120,000 a year, I wouldn't be complaining.
It's not even 9 months. It's not even 9 months.
Not even 9 months. Okay, well, I work 12 months out of the year, and sometimes 6 days a week. Honest to God, and okay, it's not the most difficult job. I'll be the first to admit. However, it's day in, day out, and I have to get up and show at work at 6 a.m. and I'm done around 6:30, 7 p.m. So the thing I'm trying to say, and I don't even make half of, maybe a little less than half of what they make at $120,000. So I'm sorry that they just don't have my ear. But Leon, do you think this has been this way, where school districts have been just dangling on the brink of insolvency for decades, or how long has this been going on?
This have really gotten bad, I would say, in the last 10 or 15 years. Honestly, It really have, especially in the big school districts.
Well,
I don't remember when my kids were going through school, this kind of nonsense going on, and they went through the public schools. Actually, my kids did. So, and I don't remember it, but I'm just so glad they're all through with all that kind of stuff.
Well, let me throw another piece of evidence on this too. Right now here in 2019, 2020, it's not quite the current year, but it says they're making $91,000 in salary. Okay, that's what they're making for, like you said, that short work year. And the average the median income, I believe, is around $65,000 in the country. That's household income, right? So I mean,
55. You said?
I think it's around 65. So 65. So okay. I'm just saying. I mean, unfair. And quite frankly, you know what you're getting into when you come out of school. And if we had markets, maybe then you could try and go to a school that you thought could pay you more, because maybe they can use your labor more efficiently instead of just going to the government and asking for an edict on wages, where nobody gets to decide.
But do you think? Right. But Jason, do you think that is? Did I cut you off, Jason? I'm sorry.
No. But we're going to have to jump pretty soon, so make it quick.
anyway, do you think that's offensive about this? Is that these people are not educating the children, the people they're supposed to educate, and yet they're demanding more? This is absolute nonsense.
Yeah, I agree. And nonsense. Speaking of nonsense, let's get to our Knucklehead Noise Patrol. On this week, it's teachers that have ended up in the Knucklehead Noise Patrol, and it's the head of the teachers union in trying to virtue signal about I guess they're too busy to teach, so they're virtue signaling on Ukraine, and in their virtue signal, can you see what's wrong with that flag? And here's an actual up close of the flag. It's supposed to be the Ukrainian flag, and it's not the right flag, because this is actually what the Ukrainian flag looks like. The blue is on top and the yellow is on the bottom. And they make sure to put their logo on it so everybody knows it's the teacher. And there's the AFT as well. And then when they realized that, they tried to Photoshop it. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, they stand with Ukraine, but we weren't told that they're standing on their heads.
What I find scary about is these are the idiots that are trying to educate our children. Okay, it's true, my kids are growing and they're no longer in the public school, but I have a grandson who will be going into the public school system here pretty soon. These idiots are the ones who are trying to educate our children. They can't spell Ukraine, and they can't even get the flag right side up. God, this is scary stuff you're talking about here, man.
And they want more. They want more money to boot.
Exactly.
And
I find that offensive.
They want to continue to mask your kids as well, and not have to show up for any COVID risk. But unfortunately, we've reached about the end of our show. Sadly, we actually have a schedule to keep, unlike the teachers apparently. We hope to see you the next time. And until then, stay free.
Indeed. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.